Big thing, big scary. Out of all the phobias a person might have, none are quite as peculiar as megalophobia. Whether it be giant ships or enormous hills, or the thought of the moon just existing, there are many great examples of this phenomena scattered across the internet, but very rarely does it feature objects or situations you'd actually find yourself in. It's hard to witness stuff like this with your very own eye, and sometimes that true sense of shock gets lost in translation. But you know what's very easy to understand and great at making awe and wonder? This thing. Not too long ago, my friend invited me to play a little cool-looking indie release called Core Keeper, and what I thought would be a pretty straightforward Terraria copy turned out to be a nearly 100-hour adventure as we delve deeper into these mysterious lands, seas, and deserts, slayed dozens of weird creatures, explored dungeons, and of course, took down gigantic bosses. The game begins very humble as you gotta defeat the big slime and this raging fella as your first bosses, but the moment you make your way across your first great chasm and reach the heart of this lush jungle, the game almost like surprises you with the reveal. No cutscenes, just giant shadows and some very concerning rumbling. It's a very deliberate choice to play up the scale and make this encounter seem bigger than it actually is. And from this point onward, every single boss is just another showcase of size. It's quite a spectacle. Especially the ocean section, which I don't really want to talk about because it gave me genuine anxiety. But boy howdy, how little did I know what was waiting at the edge of the world. Making your way past the shimmering frontier, you come across one last chasm. This one not quite like the ones that came before. It's way wider and there feels something very off with the other side. Arriving in this place for the first time is quite a nerve-wracking experience. The atmosphere is so dense, your maxed out tools do nothing, and these giant worms deal a lot of damage. But if you make your way through the nooks and crannies, you make your way to a big opening. And as you slowly explore the surrounding area, you hear a kind of rumbling in the distance.
What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that, Private Eye?
A couple years ago, we actually did our first dive into this topic, just to get a better understanding of why this as a genre of horror works. Yes, it's the infamous Booker video. I can't even... it's literally staring at me.
Spartacus, this is huge. It's bigger than that, Chris. It's large.
While the video itself has aged a bit, there are still some good points made throughout.
Planet is this big, this big, this big, and then the next one is this big.
When I think about megalophobia and the vast world of video games and how this sense of feeling could be explored by stuff you can experience firsthand, when I think back on all the jumpy moments and scary memories of actually witnessing this very specific kind of fear, what games, when and where, and how was it presented, my mind just always wanders back to, Club Penguin. I have previously talked about the Cursed Fair minigame and how because of my undefeated gamer skills even at age 11, I was able to last long enough on my attempts to see the falling targets become bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually they'd be big enough to no longer fit on my screen. Palms sweaty, arms heavy, I continued to play, and then one of the targets spawned so incredibly big that it genuinely jump scared me and I had to close the tab. Trauma forever! And that wasn't even the only instance of feeling megalophobia in this online chat room designed for kids. Back then, I couldn't even describe the type of fear I was feeling. Even back then, it felt silly, but the fear was very real. Because out of all the wacky and wonderful minigames to play around the island, the one I furiously avoided was Aqua Crabber.
Wow, 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 wow.
now?
I could say the controls were clunky, the navigation was a bit confusing, and the introduction of a timer is a disliked part of game design I still retain. But all that would be a lie, because the real reason are the gigantic horrors waiting on the deep dark sea floor. Not designed to be scary, obviously, but because it evokes a very undesired emotion within, still scary nonetheless. And if only it were the only game from my childhood with such a lovely memory. Hungry Shark Evolution on the App Store is a game where you swim around as a shark and eat bigger and bigger fish as your own shark grows in size. It was honestly a very fun mobile game to play as a kid, as once your shark gets upgraded enough, the action starts getting pretty fast paced, and eventually, every once in a while, you run into another shark that is times and times bigger than you. You don't even slowly discover this gigantic horror. You're moving so fast that at one moment your screen is absolutely empty, and the next moment it is anything but empty. After having this jump scare happen to me not once, not twice, multiple different times, I decided I've had enough, that I'd rather do my homework than play this horror game. I love the first thing you see on their website, defeat huge bosses. Nope. And what the fuck is this thing?
Okay, I've seen enough.
What this example highlights very well is the specific kind of condition these scares require in order to be effective. What do you see common with Core Keeper, Club Penguin, and now Hungry Shark Evolution? The camera is not only locked still, but also rather close to the playable character. There are 2D games where your character is positioned very small in the middle of the screen to give focus to the surrounding environment, but in games like Core Keeper, the camera feels a bit too zoomed in, which in itself creates a sense of claustrophobia, as you're designed to have trouble grasping all the action in its entirety, whether it be new areas, hordes of mobs, or gigantic bosses. The world feels bigger because at any given moment you're able to perceive only a very small area of the total map. While this design choice hinders the gameplay a bit, it does a great job at making everything feel bigger. And honestly, it's as simple as that. If you make the view distance small enough and the approaching enemy big enough, there's almost no way for the player not to be surprised by the encounter, especially on their first playthrough. These moments are few and far between, but when they do appear, they sure do leave an impression. The Wall of Flesh from Terraria, Radiance from Hollow Knight, freaking Exposito from Blasphemous. In a sense, I feel that 2D games bring this effect to forefront even more than their 3-dimensional cousins. Having control of the camera and seeing the setting from ground level can lead to some crazy moments, but when the view is very limited, all it takes is to show a mere corner of the creature for your mind to run wild trying to figure out the size of whatever you're seeing. Or, well, not seeing. Sometimes just giving the idea of presence is enough to trigger this fight or flight instinct, which is a lot harder to pull off in a 3-dimensional space. Having a giant shadow fly by doesn't bring about as much shock when I can just immediately look in the direction and instantly see the full scale of whatever it is I'm dealing with. Of course, with great level design, you can set up moments where this works even in 3D games, like the implied horror of Iron Lung. But even these pale in comparison to the simple nature of a zoomed-in camera, and there is no better example of this than the what the fuck?
Nope.
Thank the Lord I am too young to have played Echo the Dolphin on the lovely Sega CD, because if by some miracle I'd managed to go through the entire game just to be faced with the Vortex Queen as the final boss, I would have literally imploded. This sequence really does put into perspective everything we just talked about, how effective a couple simple design choices can be, and how little it actually takes to traumatize children all across the globe. With that said, it is now time we go exploring in the realm of 3D. The straight up shock value might be stronger in the 2D titles, but there's so much more to Megalophobia that makes it fascinating in my opinion. And to truly get a sense of the scale and wonder, we gotta look up, like real high up.
Mom said it's my turn on the Xbox.
Instead of going down the expected path and talking about Shadow of the Colossus, you seen Shadow of the Colossus? Look at all the shadow of these colossi. Instead, I wanna take to the skies and bathe in the glory that is modern Zelda. Back in 2017, coming out of that cave and stepping onto the Great Plateau for the first time, I felt a feeling I'd never quite felt before. I've played dozens of open world games, at least the ones my old laptop let me, but not one comes as close to immersion as Breath of the Wild. And it's not the Skyrim kind of immersion. In this game the world feels physical, in a sense of literal scale and distance. The trees, the hills, the rivers and lakes, it all feels as big as you'd expect it to actually be, but never too large. Scaling giant mountains is a near unbearable task to overcome. Skyrim doesn't even come close.
Orgnar, are you listening?
Hard not to.
The ale is going bad. We need to get a
I remember accidentally pressing down on one of the Joy-Cons and grading a beaming marker all the way across the map. Seeing the exact point on the map and putting the distance into perspective made me just go, wow, this game is big, like really big. But it was in a sprawling rainforest during an electrifying thunderstorm that made any kind of climbing actually impossible. It was then and there when I encountered the Sky Beast. Actually, calling it a beast might be a bit confusing. I'm talking about the giant dragon. Having a stare through the telescope, I almost couldn't believe my eyes. You mean it just flew over here, just like that? Seeing these dudes arrive from the distance lets you line up a good jump to get an even closer look, and damn. Even the dormant one you encounter on the mountain, maybe especially that one, gave me unbelievable anxiety just being near it. The fact that you get to slowly approach it while taking in just how big this dude is. And when you get real close up and personal, it's just, oh boy. Exploring skies and deep underground caverns can be a bit overwhelming at first, but I don't think I encountered anything as jaw-dropping in the sequel. In Breath of the Wild, you're firmly on the ground at all times. The surrounding landscape puts the scale of these giant beasts into perspective very well, although the Golgara fight is still a sight to behold. But having no backdrop to unfocus on, you really don't get the same sense of size. Then again, I can't say Tears of the Kingdom didn't have its fair share of moments. Taking an intentional, or maybe sometimes accidental, dip into the chasm surrounding Hyrule Castle is truly something special. And once you explore enough of the deep dark depths, having a think back on how incredibly much ground you've covered and how much more there is yet to explore, it's a quick and cold realization just how infinite these glowing tunnels really feel. Nightmare Fuel is cool and all, but sometimes the entire experience is designed in a way that at any step and corner, you're met with an environment that deep under the surface triggers that same feel of megalophobia. Portal 2 might be one of the earliest encounters I had with an overworld that's meant to look like it just goes on forever and ever and ever. Endless test chambers and concrete walls as far as the eye can see. Sometimes you even get a glimpse outside, just to be reminded that you are indeed inside a mega structure, and not just any old one, the biggest you've ever seen. A similar kind of spectacle can be found in many other games where the focus has been put on the direct surroundings the player explores, while showing off some real big moves in the background. Lorne's Lure is one I see mentioned a lot when this topic comes up. After years of development, the game is out in full, and the scope is bigger than ever. While in Portal, the hugeness of the world is implied with stuff you can't directly interact with. But here you're fully hands-on the action. Most of what you see can be climbed on, So how this desolate landscape gets explored is entirely up to you. Some other good examples are Naissance, the utility room, and maybe even Scorn, as when you make your mega structure more fantastical, the less you need to worry about realism, so the big nope scale can be turned as far as your sick heart desires.
That's quite big.
Then again, there are instances like Half-Life and Control, where the underlying horror of the giant structures comes from the fact that how tangible and real they feel. Having the citadel pierce through the clouds and be visible from almost anywhere is such a great touch of making this world come to life. And the oldest house interior pieces you see in Remedy's shared universe is also A+ level design.
Or die trying.
But instead of gradually getting bigger and bigger, what if instead we got really small? Like real teeny tiny. In Grounded, you're not fighting slimes or goblins. Instead, you're tasked to take down enormous fucking spiders and just about every other creepy crawler one might find in their own backyard. I don't know why I keep talking about big spiders in my videos. I truly forget it's me who has to edit them later. What fascinates me about this game is maybe once again not the nearby surroundings you directly interact with, but rather the effects the skybox has on the whole atmosphere. Although yes, the giant bugs are pretty disturbing too. It's almost like in Subnautica when you see the gigantic crash ship on the horizon. This game in general makes you feel all kinds of small, from the different sea life to the colorful coral. Diving underwater for the first time gives a sense that life has evolved a bit bigger on this somewhat prehistoric planet. Even the tiniest fishes you encounter feel rather chunky compared to how minuscule some of the real life fishes are. But you ever heard the saying, there's always a bigger fish out there? Well, guess what?
And I don't like that sound, so I'm just gonna go this way.
Thalassophobia and Megalophobia go hand in hand pretty darn well, so even a humble fishing game like Dredge managed to make my shit cold the first time I encountered this game's version of the Kraken. And then there's From Software, who prove time and time again that they have a very good understanding of how to make gigantic encounters both look and feel bigger than life. There's pretty much no point listing out the different bosses that feel almost ridiculously big, probably some of the biggest being the Bed of Chaos and the Ceaseless Discharge in Dark Souls 1, the Dragon God in Demon Souls, there's Astel in Elden Ring, alongside whatever this thing is, and don't forget Amygdala from Bloodborne. And surprisingly, even the Armored Core franchise has seen its fair share of Megalophobia, but never quite as blatantly as in the 6th game. There are so many levels where you're just straight up taken back by how big both the mechs and the world are in this game, especially when you see the ordinary looking items like cars and shipping containers next to these mechs. It's a very deliberate choice to populate the surroundings with so many differently scaled things. It is a constant reminder of just how difficult it is to truly wrap your head around it all. I don't know where else to mention it, but I was always fascinated by the enormous background scene in the game, Inside. Or even the moment in Death Stranding when the camera pulls back to reveal the true size of the PTs.
We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended warranty.
And while we're here, I feel it's worth mentioning Platinum games as well. From Nier to Metal Gear Rising, or even Bayonetta, it's like not one game of theirs gets developed without giant monsters or humongous environments making an appearance. Nier especially has a plethora of holy shit moments that almost blows everything else we've seen so far out of the freaking water.
Man, fuck you!
Yeah, fuck you, you high and mighty weasel!
Okay, I guess the band-aid's off now, and we can go from pretty big to unfathomably large. Way back in 2005, God of War on the PS2 arrived with a real mean look. This game had a determined goal to bring gigantic boss fights into the new generation as the franchise went on. The scale and scope was greatly expanded on as the technological capabilities improved. It's pretty crazy to see how much of this giant world we got to see.
Challenge me
mortal. A god of Olympus?
That being said, just a year earlier, the Monster Hunter series set out to achieve a very similar kind of goal, just in their own way. The franchise is built on hunting down huge monstrous beasts, and while most of these giant foes never got too large, especially back in the early days when the hardware was a very limiting factor in bringing these ideas to life, thankfully since then we've had nearly 2 decades of different examples, some of them getting pretty darn big. It's worth mentioning Dragon's Dogma and its sequel as well. While the scale might not be as big as some of these gods and monsters, in Dragon's Dogma the fight feels more close up and personal, similarly to The Witcher 3, where the beasts don't even have to get that big, because if they're trampling all over you, they sure feel gigantic. And then there are games that, instead of trying to create a spectacle for you, they instead try to simulate a game world that could technically go on forever. In Minecraft, there are no limits. If you really want, the sky can be as high as you want and the world bigger than could ever be explored. With mods, you can lift all kinds of view distances and other restrictions and start building something so incredibly big it would take a supercomputer to view it all at once. There are so many pictures and videos of different builds people around the internet have made, all invoking a deep sensation of this damn phobia. Even thinking back on all the memories I have of this game, there are moments when I felt that sensation firsthand. In fall of last year, a bunch of Estonian and Finnish content creators got together to do an SMP, and what I encountered on one late night evening shook me down to the bone. On another server, I remember building a giant Enderman statue overlooking the spawn, and almost immediately regretting building it because of how much it creeped me out. Or even just simply playing survival for the first time since the cave update, and coming across a cavern so big you can't even see the bottom. Damn. I can't believe I almost forgot to mention one of the main moments that inspired me to make this video in the first place. In a game called Don't Look Outside, if you decide to be a bit of a rebel, go against the one and only rule the game tells you, and in fact, do look outside, well, words would not do justice for what follows. We've talked about big creatures and big structures, giant landscapes and enormous backdrops, even technically infinite ones. It doesn't get much bigger than that, right? I remember walking home one night, and just before stepping through the front door, I decided to look up, like straight up to the sky. And I don't know if the night sky was playing tricks on me, but it looked like the Big Dipper took up nearly the entire sky. I don't know what I actually saw, but it gave me quite the spook for a second, as this uncontrollable feeling came over me, and for a mere moment I remembered that I'm just a dude standing on a floating rock, surrounded by more space than my feeble mind could ever comprehend. And that was a type of megalophobia. I never quite felt like that. Well, that was until I played Outer Wilds. In this game, you get to adventure through an entire solar system of different planets. Yes, the straight up scope is nowhere near the amount of planets games like No Man's Sky or Elite Dangerous have. Wait, how much? 400 billion stars? Oh, star systems? Okay, but having the 1-to-1 scale observable universe as your playground feels a lot less impactful without atmosphere. Of all the planets you get to traverse, not one left quite an impact as this one right here. The Dark Bramble is unlike any other planet in the system. Things might not even look too out of place at first, although the large, confusing network of twisted vines and teleportation passages can make exploration a bit of a headache. Let me remind you that outside of the looping time limit, there's no hostility in this game. No enemies, just hazardous obstacles. So the main attraction of this celestial body comes so out of left field that I can safely claim it as one of the all-time best jump scares in a non-horror game. And with that, it's time to put Nan back in the cage again. Megalophobia is one of the coolest topics I've discussed on the channel, and I'd love to one day look back at even more gigantic examples of this irrational fear I have. Is that weird? It's a bit weird, right?
So here's this giant enemy crab.
These videos help us get a real close look at what makes these spooks actually spooky. And if you have any other cool examples you feel deserve sharing, then leave them down below. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, please do consider supporting the channel by clicking any of the cool buttons under the video. This year is gonna be stacked with crazy videos, so it'd be a shame if you happen to miss out on any of the upcoming bangers. Alright, take care.